The dust on the training range hung just high enough to catch in the morning light. Boots shuffled across gravel, the sharp rhythm of recruits lining up shoulder to shoulder. The smell of grease clung to their rifles and the tang of oil mixed with sweat. In the middle of the formation, Maya Torres stepped forward. Her rifle was strapped not across her chest as regulation dictated, but diagonally across her back. It drew attention the instant she moved into line, though she gave none in return. Her eyes were forward, her shoulders squared, her body grounded like stone pressed into the earth. The noise began almost immediately. A young recruit to her left gave a short laugh, nudging the man beside him. He whispered loud enough for others to hear that maybe her boyfriend had taught her to sling a rifle that way. Another chimed in with a louder joke, asking if she thought she was in a video game. The clatter of gear, laughter bouncing off steel targets, and the constant shifting of boots created a wall of sound. In the middle of it all, Maya remained silent. Her stillness was more noticeable than the noise around her, but it made her a target. To them, silence looked like weakness. They mistook calm for ignorance. She did not move to defend herself. Her breathing stayed measured, her body still beneath the weight of dust settling on her boots. The crossbody sling was not laziness. It was intent. Her sidearm was positioned for primary use, a setup the others failed to notice because they were too busy watching for what regulation had told them to see. They clung to the patterns they had memorized in manuals, convinced survival came from following lines printed on a page. Maya had learned something different in places they would never imagine. The range instructor barked a command and rifles clattered into ready positions, but hers remained on her back, strapped in deliberate silence. She did not fumble, did not rush. She waited until the exact second the command required transition, and then her rifle moved with a fluid arc. The motion was so practiced it looked less like following an order and more like the continuation of a breath. She shouldered the weapon in less time than it took others to rattle theirs free from chest mounts. A few caught the difference. Most did not. Their attention stayed fixed on her refusal to mirror them, not on the precision of her action. Dust kicked up as the line adjusted again. Recruits stole glances at her, waiting for her to stumble, to reveal herself as the weak link. When she did not, the laughter grew sharper, an edge born of discomfort. People mocked what they did not understand. It was safer to laugh at difference than admit the possibility of ignorance. Maya let the noise wash past her. She had long ago stopped expecting acceptance from those who judged only by appearance. What she carried could not be explained in words or manuals. It was written into her muscles, into the silent repetition of memory that never left her. The smell of hot metal began to rise as rifles fired in sequence down the line. Muzzle blasts cracked, shells scattered across the gravel, voices shouted corrections. Maya's shot landed clean and unflinching. She did not celebrate, did not smirk, did not glance sideways for approval. She reloaded smoothly and reset her stance. Dust continued to cling to her boots. Her sling lay exactly where she had placed it, and her sidearm remained ready at her hip. Around her, the range was a storm of noise. She alone was still. What the others dismissed as error was the very thing that kept her anchored. In a place obsessed with regulation, Maya Torres stood as proof that survival belonged to those who understood when rules had to bend. The morning heat thickened as the recruits cycled through their drills, laughter still flickering in short bursts whenever Maya Torres adjusted her sling. She gave them nothing in return. Not a word, not a glance, just the same unshaken silence that had unsettled them on the first day. The sound of boots on gravel, rifles snapping into position, and shouted corrections echoed across the range. But one set of eyes was not following the chaos. Instructor Cole stood at the edge of the line, his arms folded, the weight of 20 years of Delta service behind a stare that missed nothing. Cole's gaze tracked the angle of her sling. Crossbody. Rifle positioned for a draw that ignored the manual but carried logic older than any handbook. His eyes narrowed as he watched her transition between sidearm and rifle, smooth enough that it was less emotion and more a reflex born from repetition in places where hesitation meant death. He had seen it before, on jagged cliffs and in corridors of black rock where regulation mounts became liabilities. Only one type of operator trained that way. When the drill paused and recruits began reloading magazines, Cole stepped forward. His boots crushed gravel into silence, each step pulling the air tighter around them. Conversations broke mid-sentence. The recruits expected a reprimand. They smirked, ready to see her corrected. Humiliated, put back into line. Cole stopped beside her, his shadow falling across her shoulder. He leaned slightly, his voice pitched low, meant for her alone. Only Rangers train like that. The words cut sharper than any shout. For a fraction of a second, Maya's eyes shifted. She met his gaze with calm recognition, the smallest flicker of acknowledgement passing between them. It was not surprise. It was understanding. A silent confirmation that both knew the truth of where that configuration came from. Then she returned her attention forward, as if nothing had happened. Cole straightened, turned, and walked back down the line without another word. He did not smile. He did not signal approval. He simply resumed his place, expression unreadable. The recruits were left adrift in the silence he left behind. Laughter died in their throats. None dared comment. The authority they had waited for had arrived, but instead of confirming their ridicule, it had erased it with a whisper. That night, whispers replaced the laughter. In the barracks, recruits spoke in half-joking tones about the moment. Some insisted the instructor had said nothing, that they had misheard. Others swore the phrase, "Only Rangers," carried weight they did not fully understand. They began to watch her differently, not openly, but in the sidelong glances that measured rather than mocked. They could not place her past, but the certainty of it unsettled them. Command did not take notice. Her personnel file remained sealed at clearance levels far above anyone in training. Officially, Maya Torres was just another recruit. There were no records of specialized training, no mention of deployments, no notes about cross-body configurations or sidearm primacy. The system chose not to see. The silence of bureaucracy was louder than any rumor. Maya did not argue, did not seek validation. She carried her rifle the same way the next morning, boots dusted, stance grounded, calm as stone. Around her, recruits followed regulation to the letter, their movements noisy, their confidence fragile. The difference had been marked, but not officially. Proof had existed in plain sight, carried in her every movement, and yet recognition had been withheld, locked behind sealed files and deliberate silence. The weeks stretched into months, each one marked by the rhythm of drills that blurred together for most recruits. For Maya Torres, the blur sharpened instead into quiet repetition, each task completed with the same unshaken precision she carried on her first day. At dusk, when the range glowed orange and shadows ran long across the gravel, her rifle spoke in a steady cadence, while others fired in bursts that rattled aimlessly down the line. Her shots struck clean and deliberate. The instructors kept logs of every score. When numbers were tallied, she averaged 15% higher accuracy than anyone else. The recruits groaned about luck, about lighting, about her good day. She said nothing, even as she repeated the same result on the next test and the one after that. Low-light runs became another ground where the difference could no longer be ignored. Recruits stumbled through the courses, bumping into barricades, their rifles clattering against plywood. Orders were shouted, frustration grew, and times dragged past the mark. Maya moved through the same space with half the noise and half the time. Her boots struck the ground softly, rifle transitions fluid, and every corner cleared without wasted motion. The timer ended while others were still shouting to find their sectors. She said nothing. She reset her weapon, dusted her gloves, and waited for the next round. Instructors began to notice. They leaned over grainy black and white footage captured by overhead cameras, their brows tightening as they slowed the reels to watch her angles. She never rushed, Yet she always finished first. The footage was spooled into folders, later pulled into sessions where veteran squads were retrained using clips of her silent movements. Instructors never attached her name. The files were labeled with codes, stripped of identity, to the squads who studied them. She was only Subject 4. They never knew the footage came from a recruit still sleeping in the same crowded barracks as the people who mocked her. Breach drills revealed the gap most clearly. Recruits lined up at heavy doors, stacking clumsily, shouting over each other as they fumbled charges and clattered into the room. Maya moved differently, her body angled low, the sling pulling her rifle crossbody as she flowed through the breach. Each transition was seamless. The room was cleared in seconds, corners already accounted for before others had crossed the threshold. She said nothing after each success. She simply reset the door for the next attempt and took her place in line again. The others told themselves she was lucky. They argued that instructors favored her. They blamed the random chaos of drills. The instructors never said otherwise. They gave no public credit, offered no praise, filed no commendations. Yet the truth hung in the air during every drill. Her silence and consistency spoke louder than the noise around her. Numbers written into logs carried a weight that excuses could not erase. Maya Torres did not argue, did not gloat, did not mock. She stayed still, waiting with the same quiet certainty she had carried since stepping onto the range. While others sought recognition with noise, she built hers in silence. The mountains rose like jagged teeth against the horizon, shadows stretching across valleys that swallowed sound. Dust clung to every step as the joint patrol pushed forward, boots crunching loose gravel, rifles rattling against chest rigs. Maya Torres walked at the front, her rifle slung diagonally across her back the same way it had been since training. The local soldiers noticed quickly. Their laughter carried easily through the thin air. One gestured at her sling, muttering to another that she must think she was special. Another mimicked her stance, holding his rifle awkwardly across his body until the group erupted in grins. Maya gave no reaction. Her eyes stayed forward, posture unbroken. The climb grew harsher, the trail narrowing against cliffs where the ground fell away into dark valleys. Dust rose in thin sheets, stinging the air. The squad behind her shifted noisily, boots slipping, gear clattering against rock. Maya unfolded a worn field map tucked inside her vest, studied it briefly, and refolded it with practiced care. Her pace adjusted almost invisibly, guiding the group toward the third bend where ridges offered cover. No one noticed her calculation. They were too busy joking, too sure of their own rhythm. When the ambush came, it was sudden and vicious. The sharp streak of an RPG arced from the ridge, cutting the air like lightning before detonating against stone just ahead of them. The sound cracked the mountain silence, followed by gunfire spilling from hidden positions above. Soldiers dropped low, shouts echoing through the canyon. Dust exploded upward as rocks shattered under fire. Panic spread through the patrol. Maya did not shout. She moved, rifle unslung in one fluid motion, her crossbody mount snapping into place as though it had been waiting for this exact moment. She dropped into cover and directed her fire in precise, disciplined bursts. Each round pinned the ambushers just long enough for her to maneuver. She signaled with a single hand, not words, and shifted the patrol toward a cut in the rock wall. They followed out of instinct, not understanding, but her calm steadiness anchored them. She led them higher along the ridge, using folds in the terrain to mask movement. Dust rose with each step, gunfire chasing them, but her angles cut the danger in half. At the crest, she positioned the patrol for a counter-ambush. When the enemy shifted to pursue, her fire line opened with brutal precision. 8 men who would have been lost in the initial ambush survived because she had guided them through those cliffs, because her silence had given them a path. From above, satellites scanning the valley registered nothing unusual. The engagement was too quick, the ambushers broken too cleanly. There was no trace of the patrol's position, no heat signatures revealing their ambush site. It was as if the firefight had never happened. Later, when reports were written, Credit was assigned to team coordination. Names were listed alphabetically. Her guidance was absorbed into the collective, buried beneath phrases like standard engagement protocol and effective small unit response. No line marked the moment she had unfolded her map. No acknowledgement that her decision had cut hours off the route and lives off the casualty list. Back in camp, rifles clattered as soldiers cleaned them noisily, still buzzing from the firefight. Maya sat quietly, folding the same map with care before sliding it into her vest. Her sling rested diagonally across her back, unchanged, as though the mountain itself had not tested it. Around her, the air remained full of noise, but the truth of the day existed only in silence. The campaign stretched across 13 relentless weeks, each mission etched into the dust and stone of terrain that swallowed armies whole. 22 times Maya Torres led her team into the field, and 22 times she brought them back without a single casualty. The record was unheard of, yet it was not written anywhere. Reports reduced her role to phrases like effective coordination and favorable terrain. The silence of official language erased the shape of what had truly happened. In the ruins of shattered towns, she guided squads through alleyways where shadows twisted into ambush points. She adjusted routes wordlessly, hand signals sharp and deliberate, cutting danger before it could strike. In cliffs carved with narrow ledges, her pace shifted just enough to avoid zones where snipers had sightlines. She knew by instinct where the enemy waited, as if the rocks themselves spoke to her. Soldiers followed, because not following meant risk, and soon none questioned her choices. In firefights, her precision anchored them. While rifles cracked and dust turned to choking clouds, she moved with the same calm steadiness she had shown on the range. She never wasted ammunition. Every burst landed where it needed to. Enemy positions collapsed before they could regroup. The chaos of war pressed in, yet around her the center held. Silence gave form to survival. Whispers began to replace laughter. Recruits warned each other quietly in mess tents not to mock her or her weapon setup. They could not explain why, only that she saw things others did not. Instructors replayed her helmet footage in closed rooms. Grainy images slowed, frame by frame, to map her timing. Veteran squads were retrained using clips stripped of her name. On the screen, she was only Operator 6, a shadow guiding others through kill zones without hesitation. Among the soldiers who fought beside her, the looks grew quieter too. They exchanged brief glances after missions, eyes acknowledging what reports refused to note. No one said it aloud, but they understood they were alive because of her. Her kill count, her split-second adjustments, her cliffside maps marked by hand, none of it ever entered the official logs. Yet it lived in silence, repeated mission after mission, a rhythm that endured like breath. The campaign ended the way it had begun, with Maya folding her map, sliding it back into her vest, and carrying her rifle the same way across her back. Around her, noise filled the camps and reports stacked in neat piles that gave credit everywhere but to her. She never asked for correction. She carried her silence forward. Proof written not in ink but in lives returned whole. The camp was still heavy with dawn when the rookie found the nerve to speak. Soldiers shuffled about, clattering gear, rubbing sleep from their eyes, the smell of burned coffee mixing with cold air. Maya Torres stood apart, tightening the straps on her vest, her rifle hanging diagonally across her back as always. The crossbody sling caught the young soldier's attention. He had watched her for weeks, seen her guide them through ambushes and cliffs with the same calm certainty. Yet he could not reconcile the choice she carried every day against what manuals had drilled into him. He cleared his throat. Words rushed out before he could retreat. "Why do you still mount your rifle like that?" The noise of the camp seemed to pause. A few soldiers nearby shifted, pretending not to listen while their ears leaned in. For a long moment, Maya gave no answer. She adjusted her gloves, checked her sidearm, the morning mist curling around her like smoke. Then she looked at the rookie, eyes steady, voice quiet but carrying weight heavier than any order. "Because it doesn't forget what I've survived." The words were simple, but they struck harder than any reprimand. The rookie froze, unsure if he should reply. He didn't. The silence that followed was thicker than the mountain air. Those close enough to hear lowered their eyes. They knew instinctively that she had just given more truth than any lecture or manual could provide. Maya turned away, her steps slow and deliberate. The sling lay across her chest, rifle settled as if it had always belonged there. Mist swallowed her outline until only a silhouette remained, fading into the gray morning. She left no explanation beyond the single sentence, no story, no detail, only the certainty that her survival was written into the way she carried her weapon. The rookie stood rooted in place, the echo of her words lodged in his chest. He would not laugh at her setup again. None of them would. What had once been mockery was now a lesson, one carved into silence and carried into memory. The return to base carried no ceremony. Convoys rolled in coated with dust, soldiers loud with relief and release. But Maya Torres stepped down from the vehicle as if the last 13 weeks had been only another drill. No medals were pinned, no commendations read. Her name never passed across the speakers. Reports framed victories as collective effort, credits distributed evenly. Her presence dissolved in the language of bureaucracy. Yet, in quiet rooms, instructors studied footage that told another story. Grainy images of breach drills played again and again. Maya's silent movements dissected frame by frame. Her angles became examples, her timing used to correct veteran squads. No caption identified her. To the instructors, she was Operator 6, a nameless figure whose methods were quietly written into doctrine. In the training hall, soldiers passed the weapon racks without noticing the new plaque set flush into the wall. It bore only 5 words. Only Rangers train like that. No one stopped to question where it had come from. Most barely read it. The few who remembered the phrase from the range felt the echo, though they could not place why it mattered. Maya sat alone in the mess, tray untouched, eyes calm. Around her the room buzzed with chatter and laughter, stories retold too loudly, yet none included her. The silence did not trouble her. Recognition was never expected. She carried her rifle the same way. Sling across her chest, sidearm resting primary at her hip, the plaque on the wall, the footage in hidden rooms. The whispers passed quietly between soldiers that was the shape her legacy took. Unseen, unspoken, uncredited. Her presence endured all the same. Years passed, and the training halls changed. But the method endured. New recruits sat through lectures on tactical ergonomics where instructors clicked through doctrine slides showing a rifle slung across the body. No name accompanied the image. It was presented as technique, stripped of origin, a standard to memorize like any other. Yet among the rows of recruits, whispers threaded through the silence. They called it shadow mount. No one could say for certain where the term began. Some claimed it came from the mountains. Others swore it was born in ruins where no satellite could see. The myth carried its own warning: do not mock what you do not understand. Young soldiers repeated the phrase in hushed tones, half caution, half reverence. In the corridor near the weapon racks, the plaque remained. Only Rangers train like that. Most walked past without noticing, but those who paused felt its weight. The words held no name, but the silence around them was louder than any commendation. Maya Torres never returned to claim it. She did not need to. Her legacy lived in doctrine, in whispers, in silence that outlasted noise.